Honorable SCG, I just want to seek your interpretation of Article 8A of the Constitution. You've, in your paper, talked about public interest. I can just read it briefly. 8A, 8A, subsection 1 and 2, or clause 1 and 2. Uganda, under 1, shall be governed based on the principles of national interest and common good enshrined in the national objectives and directives of the principles of state. 2, Parliament shall make relevant laws for the purposes of giving full effect to the clause 1 of this article. Then, under Directive 4, which you've cited of the Constitution, 1, 2, and 3, the state and citizens of Uganda shall at all times defend the independence, then sovereignty, and territorial integrity of Uganda. 2, the state, highlight that word, the state and citizens of Uganda shall endeavor to build national strength in the political, economic, and social spheres to avoid undue dependence on other countries and institutions. And 3, the state, again highlight the state, shall endeavor to mobilize, organize, and empower Ugandan people to build independent and sustainable foundation for the development of Uganda. In light of this bill, what is the role of the state? Because you said it should be thrown out. But under Article 8A, we have to make laws to ensure the protection of this interest. So what is the role of the state looking at this bill?
So Honorable Nsibambi, yes, Article 8.1 provides for national interest, but I also want to refer you to Article 43 of the Constitution, which talks about public interest and clearly says that public interest shall not permit political persecution. This bill intends, for all intents and purposes, to persecute the people of Uganda. It is intended at political persecution. And so national interest, and I'm trying to infer public interest into national interest, it cannot in any way stand insofar as it promotes political persecution. And so, but also secondly, when you say what would be the role of Parliament, this protection of sovereignty bill as it is not the law envisaged under Article 8A. The law envisaged thereunder is a law that would clarify what national interest amounts to. That's not what this bill is doing. So this bill just refers to national interest, but does not even define what national interest is. So if you ask me what Article 8A, the import of that would be, because it says that Parliament, Uganda shall be governed based on principles of national interest and common good. And we all know that that's not what is happening today, both in practice and in legislation. So I think that, in fact, the enactment of this bill into law would be contrary to Article 8A that you're making reference to. Now, I did mention something about opposing government policy, and I think some honorable members...
Sure. You see, the problem comes when lawyers are trying to argue. As a clarification, if this bill was to operationalize any provision of the Constitution, the object would state so.
Absolutely. And that's what he was asking. And I said, this law is not really addressing Article 8A of the Constitution. It doesn't. About government programs, I think we have a right to criticize government programs. And when I say we are in opposition, it does not mean that we are going to be opposing every single thing. But what I'm saying is that we have a right, and the people of Uganda, whether in Uganda or in the diaspora, should have a right to oppose those government policies or programs. And people, you know, Ugandans in the diaspora should even have a right to encourage the people of Uganda. If a person is in the diaspora and wants to communicate to the people of Uganda or mobilize them to oppose a certain policy, which they think is oppressive or repressive towards them, they must have a right to do that. And that's why we talk about alternatives, because if, for example, you talked about UPE and PDM, as an UP, we have a better understanding of how those programs would be for the benefit of the people. So it's not, we have a right to offer alternatives and definitely to oppose those things which we do not agree with. Now, someone, I think the honorable member also asked about paragraph 3, which begins, notwithstanding the unconstitutional nature of some of their provisions. I think you misread that paragraph, because that paragraph refers to other laws. It refers to the Anti-Money Laundering Act, the Computer Misuse, the Political Parties and Organizations Act, the Presidential Elections Act, etc. That's not a reference to this bill. That's why we say, notwithstanding the constitutional and unconstitutional nature of some of their provisions, other laws that already address the defects purportedly identified, the bill include, and we give a list thereunder. So it's not that we are conceding that there are some provisions which are constitutional. No, not at all. The honorable member said affect only NUP, which is why you should also oppose it. Definitely. I was here to speak on behalf of NUP diaspora, but now that you agree that it will also affect your diaspora, then you should, as NRM, oppose it with all your lives. Now, Honorable Katuntu, Senior, talked about, his question is, what if the definition of foreigner is rectified? And my submission would be that it would require the withdrawal of this bill, because the entire objectives of this bill are based on the definition as it is stated. So it would probably require you to withdraw it and redraft. If you look at, that's why in our submission begins with the objectives of this bill. We begin by opposing, because if the objective of the bill and every other provision relates to this animal called the foreigner as has been defined, then I think even if you changed, you cannot only change the definition of foreigner and retain the other provisions thereunder in their current form, because then that would defeat the definition of foreigner as it is. I hasten to add that the cardinal stated objective of this bill is to promote the sovereignty of the people of Uganda, but in fact it takes that away. This bill takes out the sovereignty of the people of Uganda in the objectives. So that's why I'm saying that the entire bill is based on this idea of the foreigner as has been currently defined. And I think if you wanted to change that definition of foreigner, it would require this bill to be withdrawn. They go back and do a good job. If they wanted to bring a law that promotes sovereignty and not tag it to what they have tagged it onto. So that's, and then you talk about constitutionality. Again, from the objectives, we are saying that right from the objectives throughout all the provisions, everything is really, really unconstitutional if you look at it. The broad, for example, Honorable, you know very well that in the Karamaji Andrew case, the Constitutional Court was very clear about provisions that are vague, that are so broad, and I think that has come through many other provisions, including the Kabaziguruka case. Now, we are saying that if you look at the several provisions of this bill, they are so broad, they are not specific. You cannot see what they are intending to address. They are trying to catch everybody and nobody. So that's why you cannot say that by changing the definition of foreigner, you would achieve constitutionality, in our humble opinion.